Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Dalmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechvalley.com, and now, as you can see, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, and I'm having a lot of fun doing all of that. My column in the Jewish Press is called Albany Beat. It comes out, it's a monthly column, the third week of every month, and I hope people will go online and find it, or find it in the paper, or whatever, but anyway, I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. And one guest today could certainly help us relate to that a little bit. Brandon Muir, the Executive Director of Reclaim New York. So welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
It's great.
Tell us about what is Reclaim New York. We're reclaiming from the American Indians, from the Native American. What do we have to reclaim it from?
Well, we want to put it back in the hands of the citizens. Citizens are the owners. But Reclaim New York is
like Bernie Sanders.
Well, this is about the community feeling empowered, really. We want citizens to understand that through civic education, they can be equipped to have a better understanding of what's going on day in and day out in government. We sort of take the approach that government is complex. Government is policies and people not always responsive. We see the news about people getting carted off to jail that are supposed to be our legislators representing our interests. And our take on it is through having a better understanding of what's going on, through genuine civic education, and through engagement opportunities, we can bring these two pieces together to give people a sense of ownership again, to feel like they actually can stand up, make a statement, and be heard.
Well, if we had initiative and referendum, that would be a big step towards that, wouldn't it?
What would that be? What is this?
It's INR. It's that people could collect enough signatures on a topic where they could get it on the ballot, and then people could vote for a certain thing. So when you have a recall election, or you want bottle deposits, or you want to do away with something, you don't need to worry about whether your state legislator has something bottled up and is going to be trading this for that, but you can actually facilitate.
Put it on the table.
Yeah, put it on the ballot for the people to vote. Did I get that right?
Very close, and we would add to that, that's a form of civic engagement. And at the end of the day...
What I want to say is a bugaboo, and I've been saying this to a lot of people, is just that, half the people vote. That's, to me, it's appalling, because, I'm a Jewish person, I was just raised. It's your privilege to vote. Our ancestors in Europe were second classes. They never got to vote for anything. Sure. And, so when you don't vote, you have a right to vote. And then also, the problem is the ignorance of even college students don't even know who the vice president is, or some high percentage, I don't remember. So, to me, that's also incredibly appalling.
Who is the vice president?
Yeah. Mark, you're the reporter over here.
You've got several key points there, but we can give you the fun stat of 1974. Turnout was 75%. In 2014, it was 34%. So it's not even half.
1974 was an anomaly.
Fair enough, but what we see is that trend line, and it's been a very steady decline.
What was it from 60 to 74?
I can't speak to that off the top of my head, but what I will say is that the reasoning, what we believe, are for a couple of points. Number one, people are busy. They've got a lot going on. The last thing they have time to do in many cases is to start reading through the policy pieces and the politics of what's going on. Number two, we by and large don't trust the elected officials to do what they say they're going to do. And so if we can't find a way to take this, what we feel is very important policy information like affordability, how can we afford to live here, transparency, is government listening, package that into essentially an offering where people say, I understand it, I can read it, I can digest it, and now I'm empowered to do something with it, then we're really back at this point where 1/3 of the people are the only ones that show up to say what they think and show they care.
People give up hope, just saying, it's going to be Democrats, Republicans, whoever, schmo that they think is in politics. Nothing's going to change anyway, so what does it make a difference?
Well, and
Would you
frankly,
summarize it that way?
Yeah, we're a nonpartisan organization because this isn't about the left doing the right or the right doing the right or the wrong. People are so frustrated, and we know that. We see it on their faces. When they show up to our events, they say, I don't understand why it has to be this way. And frankly, it's not in many other states. Frankly, people can afford to make the national median salary of $55,000 a year and be just fine. We've got examples here through our affordability studies that we've done. People are making upwards of $100,000 household income. and yet they still can't afford. It tells me something structurally wrong with our economy, our taxing environment, and that needs some work.
Well, I had a conversation with the late Judith Kay when she was chief judge, and she was calling on judges should need to get a pay raise, and it had to be over $100,000. And I was like, why? I
Right.
said, you know, first of all, you know what it is in public service, what the salary is
When you
going
signed
in.
up for it.
If you don't like that and it's not going to fit your lifestyle, then don't do it.
Right.
And she goes, well, we won't have the quality judges, like only quality judges will, who want to earn six figures will step up to the plate. I think
Right.
there are a lot of quality
You're touching on
potential judges that,
Yeah.
you know, will do it for much less. They won't, maybe not do it for a lifetime,
Right.
but we would like a revolving door. We want new ideas. We want people to be clever about reinterpreting the law. And even the state legislators. I mean, you look at the state, you know, what other states pay their legislators, and it ranges from like $100 a year to, you know, we're the second largest, second highest paid legislature.
And one of the longest legislatures that meets start to
Session.
finish.
Right, because Texas meets every other year,
Right.
and they're a large state, you know.
Well, and again, we see that anytime, you know, you're almost going into the area of pensions there. Anytime these elected officials are together for a long period of time and are trying to move the ball, one, we're not seeing any legislation. When was the last time we saw anything on ethics? And two, the information that we're getting back about economic development plans, things going forward, we're not seeing the results. So why would we be interested in paying people more to do a job that they're already not doing well?
So are you in favor of closing the LLC loophole?
Campaign finance reform as a idea to
Right.
just fix ethics, I think is a non-starter.
Okay.
And,
So
and
do you-
I think it's much bigger than just something simple as campaign finance reform.
Well, I just heard today that the LLC loophole is campaign finance reform. I
Correct.
just want to make that connection.
Sure.
Yeah. But there's also the pension. If you get convicted of a felony, that a judge should be the person to decide whether you lose your state pension.
Right.
Do you agree with that? Is that something that you support?
It is outrageous to me that you can be convicted of a felony, in some cases admit to it, and yet you still keep your pension. You have defrauded the taxpayers.
But you could be caught for DWI, and that would be a felony.
I think this is
And we're not talking about the corruption in the
Right,
state legislature,
right.
but you could be a public official, and that's why I was told today that that's why a judge should decide.
Right.
Because there are exceptions, you know, to the rule.
If you want to parse it on the line of corruption, a felony that is directly related to corruption, or a felony like a DWI, you know, I can see an argument there, but I think we should be putting our elected officials, in fact, all public officials, to a higher standard to say, you, as you said, knowingly are accepting this position and we expect the best out of you.
Right.
And when that doesn't happen, we just devalue the entire system, and that's why we see 33% of the people turn out to vote and people frustrated with politics in general.
Does it start with education, though? I think that's an important point. Because like I say, I mean, just even people in high school and college don't know who's the vice president. So you can only imagine that, like you say, they're not interested. And I don't know, that argument that, you know, I know people are busy, and that's it's an ironic also situation. Because
Sure.
the other olden days, a woman had a scrub and their laundry, and here you hit a button, and the old days you work from sunrise to sunset, and here 9 to 5, and you got a 3-day weekend.
Sure.
So there is more leisure time, and this should be pointed out. This is a very, very, one of the more important things in life is just who's governing you. And people are just so lackadaisical. And I think it starts with even the schools. Something's wrong that, you know, people, I mean, maybe you're right, they're cynical about it, and I'm sure that's part of the reason. But on the other hand, somewhere along the, you know, line, the education is so important.
Right.
To say this is the most, you know, one of the most important functions, because government could change your life in a second. You know, you know, people are screaming, you know, taxes. I mean, like that. If someone would come and rob a person for $10,000, you say, wow, you know, call the FBI, you know, call the police. And here the government just takes whatever, thousands and thousands of dollars from you. Okay, no problem, you know. Or
We say
this
this a lot, and so Reclaim New York did a large affordability study across New York, where we wanted people to ask the value question. What does government cost me? And then what am I getting in return for it? If we looked at this as a contractor or a vendor relationship, you pay X in taxes, you get Y back in services. Am I getting a good deal? It's a basic idea. We wanted people to ask that question informed with the first side of that equation. How much am I paying out? Federal taxes, state taxes, income taxes, excise taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, right? It's very difficult because we have so many different interaction points with government to total that up. And when you think about this as the largest expense you'll have on a yearly basis for your family, government, the taxes, we know for New Yorkers this is between 30 and 40%. So how is it possible to me, in fact it's scary, that we can know a third of our income goes to government, but we can't say affirmatively, I am or I am not getting a good deal for my money? I mean, can you imagine walking in?
But you know that there's a third of the people voting.
Right.
And they're getting a third of the.
And yet there's still, and I think part of that, part of the
going-
apathy and part of the cynicism
Yeah.
is based
I have
around
a
this
lot of
idea.
cynicism. I have a lot of cynicism.
And it's fair, we're frustrated, but it's based on the idea that there's this lack of knowledge. Most people, when we show them this calculator, that you're spending 33 to 45% of your paycheck on government, they stop. And their eyes get big and they said, I did not know it was that much. And then the next question is the important one. Do you feel like you're getting enough in value in return? Because Reclaim New York was not put here to say taxes are way too high and therefore you're angry, or taxes are way too low. We want to facilitate people to make that decision for themselves. We want to give them a tool that allows them to make that decision, and then we want to empower them to say, that's it, I've had enough. I can't afford 40%, and I'm going to do something about it.
Wow, so is it affordable to live in New York State? Or is certain parts of New York State more than another?
Certainly it varies by region, but I would say don't take my word for it. Look to the stat that
Well,
New York...
I'm asking you because you are the
Yes.
expert, you're gathering the numbers, you're looking at this.
Yes.
You're the analyst.
So yes, the answer is yes, it's unaffordable. And I cite the stat that New York leads the state or the country rather, in outward migration. We're losing more citizens per year than any other state in the country, and the number one reason cited is affordability.
Now, I should tell the audience that that you were with Deloitte Consulting
Yes,
in Washington, D.C.
correct.
And you led analytical engagements on mission to workflow alignment, process efficiency modeling, and change implementation
It's
efforts.
a lot of big words.
Yeah, I know, as I say, could you tell us?
But this is why you have the background to make that assessment and why you are considered the expert opinion on
Sure.
issues such as affordability in New York State. That's why I'm asking you, not just as the average guy on the street.
Sure.
We didn't just pull you in and say, is it affordable to live in New York? You have a background where you know how to analyze this stuff, you know the metrics
Correct.
behind it.
We've done extensive surveying. We've talked to literally thousands of New Yorkers, and we have data with real income points that show us people are making $120,000 a year and they have 2 or 3% left for expenses on 401ks and education.
Keeps them out of trouble.
Well, it forces their hand
Yeah,
to
too
stay
much
home on
money.
Friday nights.
Yeah.
We know where they're doing. They're in front of their TV because they can't afford to go anywhere else. But to your point, it takes a scientific approach to
Yes.
put these stats in order. The reason why Reclaim New York exists, we want to do the hard work for people. We want to take all of that mumbo jumbo and stats and policy and distill it down to where you can say, I get it.
Who founded it?
We have several founders. We had a group of people essentially that came together.
Are you
and
the
said-
first executive?
I was employee number one. So if I were at a tech startup right now, I would hope that we'd be cashing out and I'd be making it rich. But
Okay.
no, I
Well,
was
now
I was
that's-
brought in part but for the reasons you said, that there's an analytical approach
Are
to
you
it.
one of the founders of this group? Or?
Yes. So I was, as the first employee, I was a group of people that got this off the ground. So-
Okay.
And I take pride in that. We've got a great team. We're a small team. We're 7 people. But
When did you start this?
we started programming actively last October. We did our first event on Long Island October, and we've done about 25 events since then. We're opening up in the Hudson Valley this month.
Well, you
And
just had a new liaison in the Hudson Valley? that you
Yes,
brought in?
just hired a regional director for
And-
Hudson Valley
And Long Island?
and for Long Island.
Okay, and you're going to hire someone for Western New York and for North Country and
Yes.
Central New York and seven-tier.
We'll be expanding all over.
So how are you doing your fundraising, and what's
Yeah,
your
so it's gonna
budget?
Well, the fundraising is a mix. We've got grassroots donation where we're reaching out to people and saying, if you want us to come in, offer this tool around affordability, do our transparency program, we need your support, both financially and volunteers.
Do you have a board?
We do. We have a board of directors,
How many people?
4 people on the board of directors.
4.
And so
are
those
you
people
on-
have,
You're not on the board
No.
also because you're an employee?
executive director, yes, so I'm not on the board.
Okay, but you're the advisor dealing with the day-to-day operations, you're the liaison to the board?
Correct,
Okay, so you
Correct.
only have 4 board members.
correct.
Well, I think you need to expand that,
That's the plan.
because you need the board members to go shake some trees and get some money for you.
Well, a couple things. I mean, we see this approach as we're growing at a rate that's sustainable. We're only in 2 regions right now. We're going to be in central New York this fall. But we don't want to just push out a message on Facebook. I mean, we have 30,000 fans almost on Facebook. We're excited about that. But this organization was built to work directly with people on a one-on-one level. So we're doing live events. We encourage people to come out, hear us speak, hear the information. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we have our website, reclaimnewyork.org. But this isn't really just about getting across the state as fast as we can. We want to get into the fabric of these communities so we can really address the local issues.
Absolutely, and no doubt, I'm just saying that as an organization,
Yes.
which I've been in through many of them, you know, that's really what it takes to,
Right.
you know, and you want to, what's your budget now, you said?
We haven't discussed our budget out loud,
Oh.
but we are at 7 employees and expanding quickly.
And
So.
how, I mean, you're a not-for-profit,
Correct, yes.
so I could look at the 990 form?
It's all on the 990.
So please tell me,
Yes.
what's your budget?
No, so we're spending around $1 million
Okay.
across fixed costs, programmatic costs.
Okay.
And again, that information's all public.
That's
but
why I asked.
we-
I'm not asking to divulge
Sure,
anything.
No, but you know, so frequently we get into the weeds about the particulars with the budget or where we're going to be next. And we really want to bring it back to this idea that we want to talk about the basic issues, affordability, transparency, and you know, how that impacts
You know,
New
one of the
Yorkers.
things though, I mean, you're saying against the taxes, but on the other hand, there's a lot of movement for pro-business. I mean, one of the things that come up to my mind is just fracking, where they say that if fracking would come in, you know, there would be so much money and people would be having decent salaries. So are you an advocate for that, or is it just like anti-tax for the, I mean, that's what we've been talking about, so to speak, you
Sure.
know, up till now.
No, you've hit a core issue. It's not just anti-tax. In fact, anti-tax is just a small piece of it. We think the businesses will be attracted by a stronger tax environment, which of course is lower taxes. But you hit on the core issue. Right now, Albany is positioning itself in a role to be central planner. We see that with the Regional Economic Development Councils. We see that with the Startup New York. The idea that we can put some people in a room and plan out how to spend all the taxpayers' money to grow industry is something that Reclaim New York does not believe is the correct approach. And we feel that way because time and time again it hasn't worked. The more we're able to pull government out of the planning process and empower entrepreneurs to start companies and not to relocate to New York because they're getting a free building, which
Right.
is what we see right now, but to come here because this is a place you want to grow a family and a business. That's not happening across the state, and that's not the policies that we see supported.
So-
We want to encourage that.
So I take it you're not in favor of the minimum wage, of going up to
No.
$15?
No, when minimum
Even though-
wage,
Even though by the time it gets to $15, it's going to really be worth $13
Sure.
in today's money.
but whether it was 13 or 12 or 40, government has decided that it's going to stand between 2 consenting adults who want to enter into a business relationship. And here's the problem with minimum wage. You have a 15 or 16-year-old show up saying, I'm ready to work.
Right.
They now have to be worth $15 an hour to get on that first rung of the economic ladder. We're projecting out, or rather Empire Center is projecting out, 200,000 jobs are going to be lost over the next 10 years. Even if that number isn't dead on, and I tend to think it is, the fact is the people that are supposed to be supported and helped by minimum wage are the ones that lose the job first. The first thing a fast food McDonald's business owner says is we're going to replace people with machines.
Right.
We're going to outsource food preparation.
Mhm.
We're going to do everything we can to cut staff and cut hours down to the bare minimum.
And make it more mechanical.
You have to, because you have certain profit margins that you just can't get around. I don't buy into the idea that wages are not higher because business owners are greedy. Wages are not higher for many industries, not all, but wages are not higher because skill sets are assessed accordingly. And so what we want is an environment where a business owner and a 16-year-old can come together and say, I really need my first job, because my first job leads to my second job, which leads to a sustainable income. The more we try and stick government in the middle of that, in the middle of two adults who say, we want to do this, we want to create this job, and we want to work here, we're in a bad place. Again, it's back to this idea of central planning, which doesn't work.
Okay, so I get, many years ago, they talked about minimum wage versus livable wage.
Right.
Now it looks like the minimum wage and livable wage are meshing together.
Right.
And there's no difference between the two.
Right.
You know, so, and what did the governor said something about the minimum wage now is 21,000 a year?
I don't know the number
Is
off the
that-
top of
but
my
it-
head, but that would be in the
It
ballpark.
would be in the ballpark.
I think,
And then when it comes up to $15,
Sure.
you know, it's gonna be maybe, what, 30,000, is it? You know,
Yeah,
a year.
30,000,
But
I think.
you're saying the median income in New York State is 55,000?
median income nationally is
Oh,
55,000.
What about New York State?
New York, I believe it's 46,000.
Okay, you're still falling far short.
Sure.
So,
And I think the question goes back to, what is government's role in this process? Is it to try and determine wages for private business owners? Or is government's role to say, we are going to create an environment where business owners want to come here and start business?
Okay.
We're going to keep our hands out of the mix.
So-
That's where we see it.
so you gave two options. You
Yes.
claim New York says
Keep your hands
A.
out.
and not B, or B and not A?
Correct.
B.
Government should not be pushing a higher minimum wage. We now have the highest minimum wage in the country. And, you know, you look to examples like Seattle, for
Yeah, that's
instance.
what I was gonna just.
Seattle raised its minimum wage to $15 an hour last March.
Mhm.
The 9 months that followed that
Yeah.
were the lowest job hiring and most job losses since the fiscal crash.
Wow.
I don't think that's, you know, a
A model
happenstance.
to replicate.
No, and you're about to see it with California as well. Watch Arizona's population increase over the next 10 years, because business owners in California know this is not
Well,
sustainable.
for the Jewish community, it's Florida West, Arizona.
Yeah.
Everyone likes Flagstaff and.
You've got 7 states now with no income tax, no personal income tax. There are options out there, Florida, of course, being one of them, Texas, Nevada. New York is behind the 8th ball already, because we're forcing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% income tax on residents. And adding on top of that a minimum wage, which is now the highest in the country, is just bad for business.
What other issues are you working on that you'd like us to bring up and talk about?
Transparency is a big one, and I don't have to tap on the corruption in the news day in and day out.
Sunshine is a great disinfectant.
Yes.
Is that the phrase,
Yes.
right?
I wish
And
in
with
my...
transparency, I mean, can you legislate ethics? I mean, can you, I mean, if you shine the light here.
Right.
And there's shade here, aren't they gonna go to where it's shady? Yeah, that's why they call it being shady.
Sure, sure.
So, you know, you're gonna, it's like whack-a-mole, almost.
Well, for starters, we don't have the light shining everywhere, so your first point is correct. The Freedom of Information Law, created in 1974, is one of the best tools we have to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
The legislature doesn't have the FOIL, Freedom of Information Law, applied to it. The executive branch does in part, but intra-agency communications are not subject to FOIL. So I go to this point about freedom of information, the FOIL law, because it gives citizens the power to request a public record from government.
Mm-hmm.
And when public officials feel that people are watching the store and paying attention, I tend to believe that they're going to be encouraged to act more responsibly. So the more we can work with citizens, and this is one of the big initiatives Reclaim New York supports, our trainings where we teach you what freedom of information law is, how to use it,
Mhm.
and then we're taking all this data and we're going to be putting it online so people can look through it themselves.
So Bob Freeman must be one of your best friends.
Bob Freeman is as good as it gets. He understands the importance of this.
He was one of our guests here on the show, so yeah.
And he has an understanding of the reason why you need laws like this, because a state with nearly 20 million people in it, that's the potential for a lot of eyes paying attention at all times.
Well, what about?
But we want to empower them to do so.
What about J-Cope? Is it a joke?
Is J-Cope a joke? Well, J-Cope has a very serious mission.
Does it need to be overhauled?
I can say that anytime we are moving responsibility for oversight from citizens as owners to elected officials or commissions or bureaucrats or anybody else, I think you have a weaker model. What Reclaim New York supports is the idea that the best people to hold others accountable are citizens, because they're local, they understand the local issues in towns and villages, and they are the vested owners of those tax dollars. So if I have the opportunity to put someone in power in an oversight position,
Yep.
it's going to be a group of citizens.
Now, are you disappointed that the last 3 executive directors of J-Cope have come from
What
the...
is Jacob, just want to
It's
just tell our audience?
It was the former lobbying commission, and they're the record holders of all the lobbyists and what the earnings are, and when you have to file
Right.
financial disclosure forms, you have to file it with this group. And
It's a
it's-
Joint Commission on Public
Yes.
Ethics.
Yes.
And yes, they are the gatekeeper, if you will, to filings and to the disclosures of
Right.
financial statements and whatnot.
Now, the last 3 executive directors, including the current one and previous 2, all are Cuomo administration
Sure,
clones.
sure.
So, I mean, you look around the whole country, you have, 300 million people in this country.
Sure.
Couldn't they find someone else other than folks who are with the tied to the Cuomo administration to
Right.
be the executive director?
I
of
think the
this?
more important question is, are we surprised that we still have corruption issues when we trust
Are you?
government agencies? No,
You're not
absolutely
surprised?
not.
Okay.
I will be surprised the day we have a group of citizens across the state, locally and regionally, and in these cities like New York City, where we have corruption issues,
Right.
and we have empowered individuals, and then there still remains a problem. Because we don't have empowered individuals. We have a 33% voter turnout. We have young millennials who don't see the need to vote or care. When we turn that part around and transparency is demanded, because right now there's certainly no supply of it, but I would argue that there's no demand for it really. It's one thing to pick up a phone call and say,
There is demand.
it's one thing to pick up a phone call and say, I'm against corruption, I hate it. It's another to take a step to say, I'm ready to do something about it. So 92% last month,
Yeah.
this month it's 97% of
Right,
New Yorker.
97, yeah.
I didn't know that could go up, but somehow it
Yeah.
did, that's impressive. But that's the
That
issue.
They want, 97%
They want something,
corruption weeded out of
of course,
government.
as they should. But how
That's like
many
mom
of
and
those
apple pie.
97% did something? And that's where I think Reclaim New York's different. We are creating opportunities for people to actually do something about corruption, not just to throw rocks at the system.
Isn't it a sad day when this is the time when we stand up and we say, oh, this is a year where we didn't have anyone any elected official thrown in jail?
Right.
That's the bar.
Right. It is. And again, going back to, pensions, keeping your pensions we should
Yeah, I know, we
set a
just went
higher
full
bar.
circle from 25 minutes
And
ago.
that's what to me is the hope and the opportunity of our organization, is that when you see someone go from, I don't know what my village budget is, to I know what my village budget is,
Yeah.
to I know where to find the checkbook, and I know who to call to tell them I'm angry, that's a big step.
Were you appalled that Dean Scalo said, well, 12% of my pension was under my cloud of corruption, so I should only have 12% of my pension revoked and keep the rest of it?
I got to be honest, very little appalls me anymore about Albany. It doesn't. It's.
But you've heard that, right?
Yeah,
You read that or heard that? No?
the idea that these guys think they are owed something, that public servants are owed something for their service after they've violated the public trust, that's appalling to me. Am I surprised, though, that they're trying to squeeze every last dollar out of this? No.
Okay.
All right, excellent, you're doing great work.
Thank you.
And that I hope that more people are involved, really, not just that I think that you're doing good work, I think everybody does, but like you say, the next step is, what are you gonna do about it? So keep going with success and get
Thank
more and
you.
more people to to speak out and do something and do it with good health.
Continued success to you.
Thank you kindly.